Thank you. Hopefully we can get to the other agencies this evening. We're still asking questions of the AFP, and Senator Shoebridge, you have the call.
Thanks very much, Chair and Commissioner. Good to see you this time. We miss you when you go to China for functions, so it's nice of you to attend.
Do you really, Senator?
Oh yeah, well, on one level, yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't ask at what level.
I know you had a series of exchanges with Senator Patterson about this.
It was actually Glasgow I went to, by the way.
Well, I was going to ask, did you win in Glasgow?
Win what?
You went there. You went there to.
No, we didn't.
You lost. Yeah, that's right. And before that, it was Beijing.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's nice to have you here.
Thank you.
On one level. I know Senator Patterson asked you a series of questions about I'll call it the caravan incident, and I heard your responses in your exchange. But I will ask you, notwithstanding that, did the AFP receive a tip-off through the National Security Line or another crime hotline before the New South Wales Police?
Senator, if that's okay, I'll hand over to the Deputy Commissioner, the Assistant Commissioner, if that's okay.
Senator, that's incorrect. We did not.
Did anybody was a tip-off received by any federal security hotline or other federal agency or service, which the AFP was aware of?
Senator, I won't speak on behalf of other agencies.
Well, to the extent of the AFP's knowledge, was a tip-off received by any federal hotline or security agency in relation to the caravan?
I'm going to restate my answer. I won't speak on behalf of other agencies. I've confirmed that the AFP did not receive a tip-off to a hotline.
Well, was a tip-off given to the hotline run by NEMA, which the AFP was made aware of?
Senator, I think you are referring to the National Security Hotline?
Correct.
Yes, I've already answered your question.
And you say there wasn't?
To my knowledge, there was not.
Okay. And again, I'm going to ask, when was the AFP first aware of an incident or a potential incident involving a caravan in Dural?
Senator, I'll refer you back to the previous answers that we've provided and the Commissioner's opening statement.
All right. Can I ask you which protocol was in place for the briefing of ministers once you became aware of the Dural incident? What was which protocol can you point to?
Senator, if I'm understanding your question, I think we've already provided evidence that this investigation sits under the construct of the New South Wales Joint Counter-Terrorism Team, which means it's oversighted by the bodies that Assistant Commissioner Nutt spoke about earlier, including the Joint Management Committee.
And so is it your evidence that it would only be if a Joint Management Committee, which is of all of those state and federal agencies, decided so, it would be only in those circumstances that you would be in a position to brief the Minister or the Prime Minister?
So, Senator, I think Assistant Commissioner Nutt has provided a fair bit of context in relation to your question already this evening as to how that operates.
You see, because state agencies wouldn't permit themselves to be bound by joint decisions of federal agencies before they inform their ministers. It just seems unusual that federal agencies allow themselves to be bound by joint decisions involving state agencies before you inform your ministers. And in fact, That seems to be obviously what happened in this case regarding New South Wales.
I won't accept that characterisation, Senator. What I will go back to is the earlier evidence I gave to Senator Patterson around the role of the JMC in terms of endorsement of strategy, but also the JMC are responsible for the media and communication strategy and obviously in a practical sense the clearance of media releases as appropriate, and the JMC, which is Assistant Commissioner level Senator, representatives from the agencies of a relevant jurisdiction provide agreement on media or public statements to achieve consistency of messaging, and this also extends to government briefings, and that's through a memorandum of understanding.
And was it approved by that joint counter-terrorism team? Was it approved to brief the New South Wales Premier?
So going back to the opening statement of the Commissioner and making specific references to this investigation or other ongoing investigations as referenced is our position on that. So I'm unable to answer that or provide that detail you're seeking, Senator.
You see, it does seem odd though, doesn't it, hearing all of those answers, that the joint counter-terrorism team made a decision to brief the New South Wales Premier and didn't decide at the same time to brief either the Federal Minister or the Federal Prime Minister. It just seems odd from an external...
I've made no comment
on
on the investigation, Senator. Okay. I've said that I'm not making comment on the investigation. I've given you an outline of the governance arrangements, which is your original question, and the earlier evidence I provided to Senator Patterson.
Deputy Commissioner McCartney, you told us spillover estimates hearing in March of 2024 that the reason for the Commissioner's absence was the necessity for the Commissioner to re-sign agreements with Chinese police and security agencies. Do you remember that?
I do. I think that was the reason I provided, Senator.
Yep. Since then, in answers to question on notice, I think they were numbers 258 and 260, they reveal that, first of all, one agreement wasn't expiring until 2027, so there could be no necessity there. And the other two MOUs were actually re-signed by Deputy Commissioner Gale.
Yep.
So given that, do you stand by your evidence that the reason that the Commissioner wasn't at the spillover on the 20th of March was because he was required, it was necessary for him to re-sign agreements?
Yeah.
Given one wasn't to expire for another 2 years, and in fact Deputy Commissioner Gale signed the other two.
Senator, I'd have to review the evidence I provided, but at this in terms of, I think it's appropriate. You've noted Deputy Commissioner Gale, who's obviously at the table. I might just pass to her in terms of, what actually happened when the Commission went overseas.
Well, are those answers accurate, Deputy Commissioner Gale? Did you sign the agreements?
Senator, just going through the records, we had a statement of intent between the AFP and the MPS on combating transnational crime and enhancing police cooperation. That was signed on the 19th of March 2024.
By who?
I'd need to confirm that, Senator. I'll come back to you shortly if that's okay.
Senator, just as a matter of completeness, we're happy to review, but we'll take that question on notice.
You see, Commissioner, did you sign agreements when you were over in Beijing? Did you sign these agreements?
I'll have to take it on notice, Senator.
Sorry. So the whole reason we were told that you couldn't be in attendance at Senate estimates was it was somehow necessary for you to be in China to sign agreements with Chinese security agencies. The answers to questions on notice make it clear that A, one of them wasn't going to expire for 2 years, so that wasn't a reason, and B, Deputy Commissioner Gale actually signed the other two agreements. You agree that attending estimates and being accountable is important for the Commissioner of the AFP?
Yes.
You agree that you and your deputies being 100% frank in the answers you give is important? Do you agree with that? You can't just nod, unfortunately.
Senator Shoebridge.
Do you agree that that's important?
What you're saying.
Well, what we now find out is that the reason given by Deputy Commissioner McCartney to this committee to explain your absence doesn't stack up. That you weren't there signing the agreements, that actually Deputy Commissioner Gale was signing the agreements and one wasn't there for 2 years.
Senator Scarr,
How do you
point of
explain
order.
it?
Point of order. If Senator Shoebridge wishes to pursue this line of questioning, I think it would be fair for everyone if that extract of Hansard, which Senator Shoebridge is referring to, were tabled.
Well,
so we can actually see what words were actually provided and the full context.
Senator Scarr, that's not a point of order. It's a request for some courtesy, but it's okay. I think we can manage our way through these questions. I'm sure that the Commissioner has an answer to the question. If it's a question rather than a statement from Senator Shoebridge, it's a lot easier for you to provide a question.
I was in the middle of asking questions.
Was it a question or was it an accusation?
So you agree that being 100% frank with the committee is important, correct? I assume you do. I'm just testing. Do you agree?
Yeah,
Frankness with the committee is important.
Frankness.
Frankness, honesty and frankness.
Of course.
Yeah. So why were you not at estimates and why were you in Beijing? Was it for the fact that there was a celebration that was being undertaken in Beijing, celebrating an anniversary? Was that why you're in Beijing?
Senator, there were a number of bilateral meetings that the Commissioner attended whilst we were in China, and one agreement was signed by the Commissioner while we were there.
Senator, I think the way we could answer this is we'll come back with a fulsome itinerary if you want. We may have to classify some of that though, and get you to understand the importance of us maintaining a relationship with the MPS, given the amount of drugs, for example, we've seized in Operation Blaze and the other cooperation we get. So it's quite perplexing that would be questioned as to it's in Australia's interests and in our way of life in particular, with what we're seeing play out, that we maintain a good relationship with the MPS.
I would just add, Senator, in response to one of your FOI requests, we did release substantial documentation to you under 2 tranches around the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner Gale's trip to China.
Oh, indeed, it showed the cost of the trip was, I think, some $42,625 for the 2 days on the ground, and it showed attending a significant number of dinners and the like commemorating the anniversary of formal arrangements between various Chinese police agencies and the AFP. But I'm asking you, Commissioner, if the reason Deputy Commissioner McCartney gave to this committee in your absence, if you stand by that as the reason why you're in Beijing.
I'll go back to the question. I think we've stated as a matter of completeness, we should be provided the, we want to be complete in terms of our responses.
I'm happy for you to review it on notice.
Is to review it on notice and review it on notice and provide a fulsome answer back to you, Senator.
Can I also just, to support my colleague, Senator, the travel to China was organised well in advance of estimate dates. The Commissioner, on previous occasions, we have had to postpone the travel. So, as I said, it was organised well in advance of being notified of the estimate dates.
I'd ask you to review that evidence and provide a response, further details on notice, because it was my reading of the FOI documents released that showed that planning for the trip actually commenced in February of that same year for the March visit. That's what was apparent from the FOA documents, but there were significant redactions, and if there's something in the redactions that suggests otherwise, can you please clarify that?
Yeah, I think as a matter of completeness, Senator, we're more than happy to take these questions and notice and provide a fulsome response.
We also note that the March spillover hearing was, we were given a significant amount of notice for that spillover hearing. It wasn't a normal scheduled estimates event either.
I'm simply responding to Deputy Commissioner Gale's assertion, which on my reading wasn't stacked up by the FOI documents, but I accept they were redacted and perhaps there was material in there that I wasn't aware of. I think this is probably to you, Mr. Nutt, but actually I'll direct it to you first of all, Commissioner, and we'll see where it goes. Are you aware of comments from a senior member of the National Socialist Network last year regarding plans to dox a police officer? To dox a police officer, to publicly make available their significant personal information. I'm happy to give some more context. And the person's name, the vile individual who made these threats, said it on a live stream. His surname is Sewell. It said that his followers had identified in this case a Victorian police officer who in recent demonstrations had attempted to remove the mask from a neo-Nazi protester, and then had boasted that he'd uncovered personal information on the officer, saying members of the appalling group he's a member of, the National Socialist Network, had saved wedding photos and images of the officer's family. That kind of threat being made by a far-right extremist of a police officer I find incredibly disturbing. Has that been brought to the AFP's attention?
Senator, I can say that we have some awareness of that matter. However, it is a current Victoria Police matter.
Is there a joint investigation with Victoria Police?
We have engaged with them in relation to this matter, but I won't speak on behalf of them. It's sitting with Victoria Police.
Do you know if this was, the material I have doesn't make it clear if this was before or after federal doxing laws passed? Has there been consideration as to whether or not those recently passed federal laws may have been breached?
I can't recollect the timing, Senator. I'm happy to take that on notice.
For me, these kinds of threats being made against individual law enforcement officers are of an incredibly disturbing level and severity. You're comfortable, are you, at the moment, Deputy Commissioner, that it doesn't require a joint task force, that the Victorian Police have it in hand?
Senator, I'll restate my answer. We have had engagement with Victoria Police in relation to this matter, but it is currently sitting with them.
All right. Has the AFP brought this to the attention of other security agencies, such as ASIO, who are looking at right-wing extremists?
I can't talk for what ASIO's knowledge is of this. I would have to take that on notice in terms of exactly if and how we may have brought it to their attention. Of course, Victoria Police also share strong working relationships with ASIO as well, so they may indeed have done that, but I can't speak to that.
All right. Commissioner Nutt, I want to pass on the gratitude of the Sikh community for some of the... Sorry, I'll start again. Commissioner Nutt, Deputy Assistant... I'm going to just start entirely again. It's like 9:38. Assistant Commissioner Nutt, I want to pass on the gratitude of the Kurdish community for the interaction that the AFP have had addressing some of the concerns they have about potential foreign interference onshore and offshore. But I have had concerns raised with me by the Sikh community that the concerns they have about foreign interference happening here, including directed by the Indian government, haven't been picked up and addressed in the same way. What is the state of play in terms of the AFP's review of foreign actors, foreign governments, potentially surveilling and prejudicing the Sikh community? Is this a matter that's come to your attention?
We are obviously members of the Counter Foreign Interference Task Force, so we're full members of that. our actions in terms of disruptions, investigative activity is as a member of the Counter Foreign Interference Task Force working with ASIO, and that is the most appropriate mechanism to bring the collective capabilities of the Commonwealth onto this issue. In terms of our own work in terms of engagement with impacted communities, we prioritise that engagement and we'll continue to do so. Obviously, we receive various reports directly, but also through the National Security Hotline, which include alleged or thought to be foreign interference. And as I've mentioned to you directly, but I'll say for the record, is that every single allegation is examined not only by the AFP but also our other partners in the Counter Foreign Interference Task Force.
We found out in estimates yesterday that one of the individuals involved in desecrating a holy text at the front of a Sikh Gurdwara in Canning Vale in Perth had their visa cancelled by the Minister for Home Affairs. Did the AFP have any involvement in the investigation that led to that?
I'm not aware of that incident, that matter and action, Senator.
So could I ask you to take on notice whether there was any AFP investigation about potential federal offences committed by the individual who had their visa cancelled by the Minister for Home Affairs?
I'm happy to take that on notice.
And again, that was an action that was designed to cause distress and unease in the Sikh community, being an attack on one of their holy texts out the front of the community Gurdwara in Perth. It really was intended to strike a sense of anxiety and fear in the Sikh community. And so, yes, if any information you could provide on notice about that, whether there was an investigation of that individual who had their visa cancelled, would be appreciated.
Noting, of course, Senator, that the likely initial response was the Western Australian Police Force in the example you provided. Happy to take on notice what can be provided or connected in with yourself and the Western Australian Police Force.
Yeah. Commissioner, the AFP's previously advised that, and including last year, that there were multiple reviews into the AFP's involvement in what's known as the family were given the pseudonym of Carrick, the Carrick matter, the young 13-year-old boy who was charged and ultimately had the charges thrown out by a magistrate as an abusive process. Do you recall giving evidence about the reviews, you and your officers?
Yes, we do remember that
matter.
matter.
What's the nature and status of those reviews?
Thank you for your question, Senator. What I can say in relation to that was a review was undertaken. The review made 11 findings with 19 recommendations. They were against the themes of decision making, leadership and management, information management, operational activity and planning. Those recommendations were endorsed and are in the process of being implemented now and being oversighted by one of our strategic committees. Since that time, we have also briefed the Commonwealth Ombudsman, whose inspectors met with the review team and received a classified briefing in relation to the findings and recommendations. And we've also delivered a briefing to the Attorney-General and his office. What I would like to also say is that one of the key outcomes is that the review found that the conduct that was undertaken by our covert online operatives was lawful and consistent with the conduct described in the Major Controlled Operation Authority. And the recommendations of the review are consistent with those made in other AFP internal processes, such as AFP internal audit. Beyond that, Senator, I'm unable to go in any further detail.
Has anybody been disciplined or subject to any adverse management action as a result of the review?
No.
Did the review challenge the findings of the magistrate in relation to his conclusions that the AFP undercover operatives encouraged and incited the individual, the 13-year-old boy, into extremist activity? Did it seek to challenge the magistrate's findings?
Senator, I'm not going to go in any further detail. I've already provided you with as much information as I can in relation to that review, and I'm not able to go into any further detail in relation to it.
Well, you see, Commissioner, I'm troubled by the conclusion that the conduct by the covert operatives was effectively given a green light, given the public findings of the magistrate. How should the public who have read the magistrate's decision and the searing findings made against the covert operatives, how should the public take the position of the AFP, which is simply say nothing went wrong there?
I think that's a question that I'd have to read the minds of the public. I mean, it's out in the public, that decision, and I think it was a female magistrate from memory, or female judge, children's court judge. And we've been transparent on that front. It's up to the community to work out whether or not the actions were we respect the law and the decision of the judge.
Well, you didn't appeal it. You haven't challenged the factual findings.
We don't make that decision.
And yet, notwithstanding what the magistrate found, your internal review gives your covert operatives a clean bill of health. Those two facts don't sit comfortably on the public record.
Well, I think the Deputy said there are some matters that are being addressed.
Yes, I would also say, Senator, that there is this report is classified as secret. There is access to information that we are unable to discuss in a public forum, and that's as much as I can say on it.
Do any of the 19 recommendations aim to amend the way in which covert operatives act, particularly with children, in the future?
Senator, I'm not at liberty to go into any further detail in relation to that.
Is that the only review that's been undertaken by the AFP in relation to the Carrick matter?
I'd have to check with my national security colleagues. That's the only review that I'm aware of.
Is there, Commissioner, is there any other review in place?
I think we probably should take that on notice.
All right.
Senator Shoebridge,
I do have one other matter.
Is just waiting to ask a couple of questions for AFP, and I also note the time. Can we give Senator Roberts the call just for a moment? Senator Roberts, are you on the line? I hope you haven't stepped away from your... We'll give you one more second. There we go.
Yeah, Chair.
Senator Roberts, do you have questions for the AFP?
Yes, I do, please.
Okay, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for appearing tonight. Just before the break, Commissioner, the last break, did you say you revoked the COVID vaccine mandates on your police yesterday?
I can answer that. Thank you for the question, Senator. You might recall last time we appeared at this committee back in November, we did disclose that we had undertaken a review of the COVID-10, or the CO10 policy, Commissioner's Order 10, which related to the COVID vaccines. That review, as at November, had been completed and supported by our Enterprise Operations Board. I mentioned at our last hearing in November that the next phase for us to do, as per the legislation, as per the Work Health Safety Act, was to undergo genuine workforce consultation. So throughout December and January we have undertaken that consultation, genuine consultation with the workforce, which included comments back that were supportive and not supportive. In consideration of that consultation, the Commissioner, yes, he has determined that Commissioner's Order 10 is to be revoked, and that was announced to the workforce, including our our internal website has a range of frequently asked questions and information for staff to address the issues and concerns that were raised across that consultation process.
So is it true that, am I accurate in saying that they were revoked yesterday?
No, the Commissioner's Order 10 was signed off as revoked by the Commissioner on the 13th of February. It was announced to the workforce this week.
Okay, thank you. Why did you revoke the vaccine mandates? I know you've been through a process. I don't need to hear about that again, with respect. But what was the reason they were revoked?
Thank you, Senator. So throughout the process since the Commissioner's Order was put in place, we did undertake regular reviews and looking at that policy. As we talked about before in this forum, it was an important policy for us at a time to protect both our workforce and the community, particularly the vulnerable communities that we are working with across the Pacific and other areas of the globe. But the most recent review in relation to reflecting on the health advice from our Chief Medical Officer as well as ATAGI and others, we determined that risk posed didn't necessitate a specific Commissioner's order anymore because rather than it being a global pandemic, the status of COVID had been downgraded. So we made that determination through that internal review and doing an updated risk assessment treatment plan.
Given that nothing's changed, arguably in recent years, certainly in many months, why did it take so long to revoke the vaccine mandates?
As we've talked about here previously, Senator, whilst some other agencies and the advice had changed around the risk to the community, we were conscious that we have a workforce that we need to be able to readily deploy at any time, and we are deploying to vulnerable communities. So our assessment was not just to follow the general community advice, it was to undertake our own internal assessment. So we held that policy in place for a longer period of time to protect both our workforce and the community, but have determined now is the time to revoke that policy.
Given the injections did not stop people getting COVID and did not stop people transmitting COVID, why were the mandates implemented?
Based on the health advice, both from government and from our Chief Medical Officer, it was to minimise the risk to both our members and to the vulnerable community. So acknowledging, yes, of course, Senator, you're correct, the COVID vaccine didn't prevent people getting it or prevent people transmitting it, but it did mitigate that risk.
So on the evidence of the Chief Medical Officer and the ATAGI agencies, health agencies?
Yes.
Did they provide you with the evidence? So I'm asking, on what evidence?
I'll have to take that on notice, Senator, but essentially we considered the advice coming from ATAGI and others externally. We considered the risk to our people by undertaking our own risk assessment treatment plan internally, and that's in consideration of the way in which we deploy staff, where we're deploying to, the nature of our operations, etc. So for some time, our internal position was that we needed to maintain that vaccination requirement for the safety of our members and for the safety of the communities that we're dealing with. But as I said, we've determined, revised that risk assessment treatment plan now and determined that the Commissioner's Order 10 can be revoked.
On notice, could I have a copy of the advice from the Chief Medical Officer and ATAGI, please?
I'll take that question on notice. Thanks, Senator.
Thank you. And also your own deliberations within the AFP, please. I'd like to know what drove the conclusion, and particularly your risk assessment. I'd like to see the risk assessment.
Thank you, Senator. I'll take that on notice.
Thank you. The inefficacy of the COVID injections in stopping transmission was known well before yesterday. Why did it take so long to revoke?
As I mentioned, Senator, our decision to have that Commissioner's Order in place wasn't just based on ATAGI and other advice, it was our internal position as well in consideration of our own risk assessment treatment plans. We went through a thorough process to make sure that before we revoked it, we were being thorough in our assessment. So as I previously talked about, we did an internal review that Deputy Commissioner Gale's team led. That review then came to our internal Enterprise Operations Board for consideration. We supported the position of the review, and then as per the WHS Act, we undertook workplace consultation prior to making a decision, and that's a requirement under legislation.
Could I, on notice again, could I have any evidence that you considered within the AFP in making the decision and why it took so long?
Yes, Commissioner, I'm happy to take that on notice to provide that plan.
I haven't been promoted yet.
Oh, Senator, sorry.
It's coming now.
It's coming late.
It's coming, mate.
It's past my bedtime.
Just hold on.
Past my bedtime too. 2 more questions, very briefly. Why did you did you mandate the AstraZeneca shots that were later withdrawn?
Senator, our Commissioner's Order 10 required that staff had to have 2 vaccinations. We didn't mandate which vaccination that needed to be, but I'm happy to take on notice if you need more clarity around that.
Commissioner, thank you. Last question, Chair. Commissioner, will you apologise to police who basically were forced to take the AstraZeneca shot?
I don't know what evidence you have there, Senator. I'll have to take that on notice.
They were withdrawn from UK use and other countries, I believe, on the basis of a court case in Britain, and also withdrawn in this country, although I understand the Federal Health Department did not withdraw them until quite some time later. I'd like to know why they were mandated.
You mean that type of vaccination, Senator Roberts?
Yes, the AstraZeneca brand.
I think the Commissioner, sorry, I'm not going to answer for the Commissioner, but I think he's taken it on notice.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you all for appearing.
Thank you. I hope you're enjoying whatever regional town in Queensland you seem to be zooming in from. I'm sure it's a fabulous place. Enjoy. Thank you. Senator Shoebridge?
Oh, thanks, Chair.
Oh, sorry, Senator Scarr. Can we really either need to move on or finish up these questions? Senator Scarr has, I think, about 5 minutes of questions.
I can keep it at 5.
And then
I
we
have
can
one issue.
Yeah, okay, Senator Scarr. Sorry,
Okay.
I do, that is my fault. Apologies.
No.
I remember you told me
I need to apologise. So 2 quick matters, and I was actually reading some of the transcript from Hansard from the last hearing, and Mr McCartney, you were the acting commissioner, but you seem to do extremely well, I must say. So, can I, in that role, can I ask a question in relation to some questions I asked in relation to Operation Rye? Yep. Who would be the right person to ask in that regard?
Senator Iwood is the...
Your favourite commissioner.
Senator, you're going to get me in trouble here.
I like you too, Mr Kershaw. Can you give us an update in relation to Operation Rye and where you're up to?
Yeah. So the operation's ongoing. I think the evidence I gave last time, there's a range of work through the Operation Rye construct that we're undertaking.
So when we last, just whilst you're getting your notes, when we last spoke, you spoke about going through a triage process. You characterised Operation Rye as an umbrella, and you said, I think it's important to note there's considerable material that has been provided. It's material that is both current and historical in nature, so there's been a significant triage process to work through them. That's the overarching, I suppose, operation.
That's correct.
So that's when you gave your testimony on 5 November, so we're about 3.5 months progress. So what sort of progress has the AFP made in that regard?
We're making progress, Senator. I think I think in the transcript I would have reflected we were through all our triage work and obviously very close engagement with the administrator. We'd launched 1 criminal investigation. That's now increased to 2 criminal investigations. So over and above the the close engagement we have with various agencies, and there's a range of agencies that are looking at these matters. There's
Okay, so
two active investigations.
I'll just quickly move through these questions.
Yes, sure.
Have any charges been laid or filed since you last gave evidence?
No.
Okay. Is it an just to clarify, is it an Operation Rye an inter-agency task force?
It's an AFP task force, but we work closely with partner agencies, including the CFMEU, but including state and territory police. It's the coordination operation that the AFP conducts.
So working closely with, amongst others, the administrator?
Correct.
Okay. Has the AFP received any additional funding or resources to undertake this operation? And to be fair, when we spoke last time, you said that the AFP's flexible and you allocate resources as required. There are no specific additional resources allocated?
I'll repeat the same answer to the last previous question, Senator.
Okay, and how many times and feel free to take this on notice, how many times has the AFP briefed the Government, the Attorney-General or the Minister for Workplace Relations about the operation since it commenced, and when? How often do such briefings occur, and to which ministers, and are these briefings at the request of the Minister? And if you can provide any general answer now, that would be helpful.
Yeah, listen, I think in terms of our, which has been obviously a topic of interest, we apply our normal processes in terms of when ministers would be briefed, but I'm happy to take that question on notice and provide a more fulsome response.
Okay, and then just a few quick questions. Commissioner Kershaw, you referred to foreign interference in your opening statement. I'm pleased you did. We have a wonderful Eritrean community in Queensland, many of whom are courageously standing up for the pro-democracy movement in Eritrea, many of whom are subject to intimidation by the regime in Ethiopia, which has been ruling, Eritrea, which has been ruling Eritrea with an iron fist for over 3 decades. They've raised concerns with me in relation to an organisation or group called 4G, which is meant to be the fourth limb, if you like, of the Eritrean regime, and seeks to intimidate pro-democracy supporters in diaspora communities all over the world. So this isn't just an Australian issue, and significant concerns have been raised with me. I don't want to go into the details of those concerns. I'm happy to provide that in another forum, but the main purpose of raising these questions in this forum is to make sure that this is well and truly on your radar, and whether or not you're aware of the concerns in the community, including recent concerns that there are supporters of the regime who are actively seeking out the personal details, including home addresses of pro-democracy activists in the Eritrean diaspora.
So, Senator, I can confirm that through our community liaison teams, we have had engagement with that community, but I would encourage, if you do have particular information, to provide that to us, or encourage the community to provide it through our CLT.
Okay, all right, well, I'll follow that up after these estimates. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Senator Shoebridge.
Thanks, Chair. Commissioner, your former Chief of Staff, who then went on to be Deputy Chief Police Officer for the ACT, Mr Baldry, was reported by the AFP in an internal communication as having very recently resigned. Are you aware of the circumstances of his resignation?
Yeah, he resigned.
Mm-hmm. The public comment provided by the AFP is that he resigned from the AFP to take on other opportunities. Is that a fair reflection of the circumstances that led to his resignation?
I think that's been stated.
Well, he was the subject of a professional standards investigation, wasn't he, at the time of his resignation?
Oh, I'm not going to talk about our internal processes, Senator.
Well, you see, I think I'm going to require you to provide an answer to this, because in fact, Mr. Boundary was the subject of a professional standards investigation, which included investigation of the circumstances in which he had a close personal relationship with a junior member in his command, and in circumstances where there were concerns that he had not told the truth about it in the investigations.
That's disgraceful.
Is that actually a far more
Senator
accurate
Shoebridge, I know that you
statement?
are entitled to parliamentary privilege, but I would encourage you again to use it in a way that is responsible. I don't know what the basis of your allegations are, but they are serious allegations.
They are.
And
The concern I have, Chair,
and you are putting these allegations to the Commissioner without listening to his response, which has been pretty emphatic. If you have a question to put to the Commissioner, you should let him answer it. But again, I really question whether you have considered what the effect of making an allegation like that in a forum like this would have on an individual who is no longer part of the police. This is another time that this has happened, and I can't vet senators' questions. They're entitled to put them, and they're entitled to have the protection of the Parliament. But Commissioner, you should answer those questions however you wish, and unrefrained.
was the statement, the public statement given by the AFP, that he resigned from the AFP to take on other opportunities, a genuine reflection of the circumstances of his resignation, Commissioner?
Senator, I'm going to say if you're attempting to harm that officer further, you've achieved that. I have no doubt about that now, which is disappointing for us because now we're going to have to reach out to him and speak to him. It's a matter that I'm not going to discuss any further than that.
Was the statement made by the AFP
I'll take it on
for
notice.
his resignation a frank and genuine statement
I'll
about the
take it on notice.
circumstances?
Point of order. Senator Shoebridge is just asking the same question again.
All right.
And the Commissioner's been clear.
I note the time, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. That is all the questions that we have for you today. We apologise about the time.